Welcome back to our series on going through the default Godot tutorial where we're making the Dodge the Creepers game. By this stage we have created most of the game. In fact, the gameplay has been created, so we have our enemy, our player, and we've also set up our main now, which essentially runs the game. So we can play it, but of course we have no user interface, and that's what we are about to continue on with today. So in this one, we're going to start by making again another new scene. It's going to be of type canvas layer, and if you read through this, you'll understand a little bit more about what a canvas layer does. But in essence, it allows you to draw things like user interfaces, so buttons, scores and stuff like that over the top of the rest of your game, so they don't interfere with the actual game itself. It's kind of a special node in some respects. So let's do this as a canvas layer. We can just search for that. Canvas layer, here we go. Sorry, I just realized I completely did that wrong. I don't want to add one. I want to create a new scene. So let's try that all again. So new scene, what type of scene? It is a canvas layer. Here we go, that's what I'd like. And we're going to rename that to be HUD in capital letters. HUD, of course, just standing for heads up display. So the canvas layer needs some information, so it needs a score, which is going to be a score timer. We're going to have some messages and a start button. So what do we actually need to add? Well, here they are listed here. 2 labels, a button and a timer. So as children of this new HUD that we created, let's add in some timers that we've done before, and we'll just add those in quickly. We need to add one timer, not 2 of them. So we'll remove one of those. A label, which we haven't used before, so let's search for that. There it is. We do want 2 labels, however. And we want one more thing, which is a button, which we also haven't used one of those before. So let's have a look for button. Okay, and just add one of those in. Again, not as a child. There we go. Let's rename things. So the 2 labels are called score label and message. So let's go here and make sure we name them, remembering to always think about your capitalization. Because if you get them different to what the rest of the game expects, then it will give you an error. This one's called message. The timer is going to be called message timer. And finally, our button is called start button. Okay. Now we need to click on the score label and type a number. So for this, we're going to need to now come to the 2D view of our HUD, and in here, in the inspector with the score label, we're going to type a value in here. So I'm just going to put the score of 0 to begin with, which is fine. And we can see it's starting to show up. It's over here in the corner, showing the 0, but it's not a very good font. So the first thing we're going to do now is change the font that we're using to the font that they've supplied, which is this one here. Now, fonts are not like in Word where you just go to a list of them and choose from a menu. You have to bring the fonts themselves in. So we are going to be going to the text section, and we're going to be changing the theme overrides, and we're going to be coming to fonts down here. So we don't have a font yet, but we do have it in our set of resources we brought in. So we had a fonts folder, and we have the TTF font file, so we can just drag that in and put it over the font, which is good. Okay, so we now have a font in our game, but we want to change its size as well. So let's go to font sizes underneath, and we will change that to be 64 as the default. Okay, and then we want to basically do that for each of the label and the message and the button. So we've done the label, we want to go to message, so same thing, we want to come to the theme overrides, we want to choose a font, and we want to add the font in, and then we want to go font sizes and also set that one to be 64. And finally, the start button, we'll do exactly the same thing. So theme overrides, fonts, we'll have our font added in, and our font size will become 64. These ones don't have any text so far, so you won't see anything on the screen, but we've set up our font ready to go. We're now going to position each of these elements by using something we call anchors. So there's sort of predefined points on the game screen that help to keep things organized, and it's especially useful if you create a game that maybe has windows that can be resized, so that if you say something should be in the middle, it will stay in the middle, even if the window resizes. So we're going to start that process here. So our score label, as we said before, let's choose it. We've added the text of 0, which we already did up the top here earlier. We want to set its horizontal alignment and vertical alignments to be centered. So we do that here, horizontal alignment to be centered and vertical alignment to be centered as well. And now we want to choose our anchor preset. So we come and choose our anchor preset, which is, always forget where that is, it's up the top. That's right, it's this section here. So anchor preset, we drop down the list and we want that to be in the top middle. Okay, so we click on that and you'll see it moved it across. So it's going to stay in the middle horizontally, but at the top. Okay, let's see what else we want to do. For the message, we want to now add some text, so dodge the creeps. So let's go to the top to here. Not score, sorry. Message, make sure we're on the right node, dodge the creeps with an exclamation mark. I did use a capital C, that's perfectly fine. So let's set the horizontal and vertical to centered again. So horizontal centered, vertical alignment centered. That's the text in the box essentially. That's a little bit like Word. We do want to set this auto wrap mode to be Word. So here's auto wrap and we're going to choose the Word option so you can see that's basically taken to the size of the box. And I just noticed I've got a typo. Let's change that to say that properly. We also want to change this the size of this box. So we're going to go to the layout and transform. So layout, transform, which we have seen earlier. And we're going to talk about the size of this. So the X size is going to be 480 and the Y size is going to be, doesn't matter, we're going to leave the Y size whatever it likes. So there you go, it's basically created that to be as wide as the whole box. The height is being determined based on the text that we put in there, but we've now made sure that it's as wide as the whole screen for our game. And then finally our anchor preset, so again up the top here, anchor preset is going to be central. So that brings that box and puts it dead center of our screen, which is quite a good place for it. And finally our start button also needs some care. So like before, we're going to change its layout. So that's first of all, make sure we've got it chosen, come down to layout. We also want to set a size for that. So this is going to have where is it gone, transform, a size of 200 and a Y size or a height size of 100. So that's setting the actual button size. You can see that now up there. I forgot to add the text in, so let's quickly do that as well. That should just say start. There you go, it's looking better. And now our anchor preset. So first of all, what we're going to do is set this to be the bottom. So it's right at the bottom of the screen, but we actually don't want to stay there. We want to adjust that or transform its Y position by 580. Okay, so again with the button chosen, we're going to come down to the layout. All right, and we're going to come to the position, okay, and we're going to change the Y to be 580. And that's just going to move it up a little bit off the bottom, okay. So now we've positioned all our user interface elements where they should be. We now need them to actually do something. So before we get into the script, we need to go to the message timer and the message timer, we need to set its wait time, so the time it's going to go for 2, and also turn the one shot on. So with our message timer, let's set it for 2 seconds and its one shot to be on. Okay, let's add the script in. So again, let's choose our HUD, add a script. Again, we'll just leave everything as the default, and the first thing we want is a new signal. We've talked about signals before, so let's just take that copy and I'm going to paste it in. There we go. So we've got a signal for our start game. the first thing we want to do is have our show message. So this script here, sorry, this function, I should say, not script, function, is going to put some text on the screen in the message box. It's going to show it, and it's going to start the message timer. And what will then happen, I guess, is the message timer will run out, and we're most likely then going to have that message disappear. So let's do that. So we've got our show game over, and that's going to also do some messaging. So let's copy that and put that in here. So again, make sure you're reading through all the notes that are here, not just copying the text that I'm doing at the moment. As always, this is just a quick showing you how it should be put in, not necessarily going through the details. Okay, so let's add in our score update. So let's put that function in. So this is going to keep changing the text in our score label to have the value of score at the time. We were counting that score earlier. And now we need to connect all of our signals. Before we do that, I will just copy the code in so that when we connect them, they will have something to connect to, just to save me doing it later. So connect the timeout signal of the message timer. So message timer. Remember to go to node, it's timeout signal, and it's going to be to the press, so that's fine. So go connect, and if we've copied everything from earlier properly, it's connected to this message timeout here, and as I suggested, it's hiding the message box so that our node gets hidden, so the Dodge the Creeps label will disappear for a moment. And we will also do the pressed of the start button. So here we go, our start button, signals, button pressed. Make sure you're choosing the right one. And again, if you've copied your code from earlier or typed it in, it should link to this start button. So again, it hides the button itself, and then it is sending out that start game signal that we talked about earlier. Okay, so start game is going to happen. We're going to use that in a second. Alright, so now that we have created that, we're going to have to save it. So again, scene, save. If you haven't named it, make sure you do. We've saved that scene. So now if we go back to our main scene, so here is our main scene from earlier, we can bring in a copy or an instance of that HUD that we just created. So again, you can grab it from down here, the HUD scene, and drag it in, or you can do an instance of it and choose HUD that way. But either way, we have an instance of that scene. And if we were to look at our 2D view now, you can see that that has been added because it is the HUD. So if we hide that momentarily, there it's gone, show it again, you can see how it's going to sit in our game. So now we need to do a few more little things. We need to connect the HUD start game signal, so that signal that we're sending out in its script, to the new game functionality of the main script. So we are going to do that by connecting its signal. So again, with the HUD chosen, right, because that's the one that's going to be sending that signal out. When the HUD sends out the start game, where do we want that connected to? Well, we want to make sure we're adding that to main, because that's going to have the code that runs it. So on HUD start game, but we didn't call it that. We called it new game. No, we didn't. Sorry, we called it new game. So let's make sure we choose that. So main, and we're going to pick a function, and we've already got the new game one there, so we're connecting that. So when the HUD sends out the signal, the button was pressed, so it's time for a new game, it's going to run this. Also, don't forget, because we were testing earlier, unless you already did this, we want to take the new game out of there. I'm just going to comment it out with the hash, but you will also then need to add a pass command in there because there's no actual commands in ready. You can't just have a comment, so put a pass there, or you could in theory take the whole ready function out, but I'm just going to leave it there for completeness at the second. Okay, so in the new game we need to update the score, so that's happening here. Hang on one second. Sorry, I just had to double check something. So in our new game, we want to add these 2 extra lines. So as well as what's already there, we want to make sure that our HUD is being updated with the right score and also showing the message. So score at the moment is 0 when you start a new game, so it basically creates a 0, and also we're getting that temporary message of get ready. We also need to update the game over function. So if we scroll down to our game over, it's actually above in this case, we need to do something for a HUD as well, which is basically to show the HUD, the game over section from the HUD script. So that's what that's doing there. And the last thing we need to add is to our on-score timer. So let's also add this bit of code, and that is basically going to the timeout. Yes, it is. It's going to update the actual thing. So here we actually are updating the value of score, but this is going to take that score and show it using the score label in HUD to actually show it on the screen. All right, now in theory again, let's make sure we save everything. So I'm just going to do save all scenes. In theory now, when we run the game, we should have some user interface, which means we can actually play this game more appropriately. So you can see when we run it, score is 0, it's got a label for the title, and we've got this nice button waiting to be pressed. When we do press it, we get the get ready and our player has appeared. Now we're actually playing. Yes, we can see our score is increasing. So game over, that came up beautifully, menu came back, and our start button came back as well. So far this is looking pretty good. Now there is one issue, and that is that as those enemies go off the screen, we can get to an issue. So we're going to just add a little bit more in here about grouping those enemies together so that we can get rid of them all at the end. So the way we're going to do that, obviously closing the game, right, is we're going to go to the mob scene that is in here. Where'd it go? Sorry, in the mob scene, actually I have to open that up again, don't I? So the mob scene, there it is. We want to go to the nodes, and we have signals, but we also have this other thing which you haven't touched on before called groups. Now in groups is where we can basically specify what groups, just category names that we can make up for our own, this node will always apply to. So we're going to create one simply down here called mobs, M-O-B-S. In this case it's in lowercase, and to say add. So basically every instance of this scene ever made will also be part of a group called mobs. And that's really useful because in our new game, we're going to be able to use this command, which basically is going to say, hey, find all the mobs, anything that's in this group called mobs, and get rid of them, basically queue them out. Okay, so we're going to go now back to save that, make sure we do, save all scenes. And now if we go back to our main and we want to do this in the new game, so here's our new game, we're going to copy this bit of code, and it basically says that, hey, go find anything in the mobs group and send the command called queue_free, which we have already learned means to basically delete them from the tree or the game at the time, and that's going to help just to clean up those mobs if they're already there. So let's try it one more time just to make sure everything is working, making sure we've saved all scenes before we do, and press play. And here we have start. Yep, good. Okay, so we've got our enemies, game over, dodge the creeps, comes back, press start again, score went back to 0, and off we go with a new game. So yep, that is basically a fully functional game now. It has a user interface, it has obviously the character and actions, it has a score, so there's an objective basically to this game. There is a way to succeed essentially, which I guess is just get the best score you can. There's obviously a way to fail, which in this case is for the game to be over. And it has replayability because we can always start a new game. And we could leave it there, but there is one more section that we will be looking at in the next video, and that's just some sort of finishing touches, which really will involve putting a background in and some sound effects to the game, just to sort of tidy it up a little bit. So that will be in the next video.